But so we'll be moving on the next part of our presentation, which will be, I think, which will be given to us by Dr. Shiyghan Navti. That's the one on cloud careers. And yeah, I think I can't say much about Dr. Shian from based on what I say now. He's currently a certified Google trainer. He delivers courses across the globe. And when I say across the globe, it's everywhere. He's always on the move: Australia, Hong Kong, USA, and really delivering training in an area that has come and changed the landscape of what we have in our society. It's affecting almost every field. So the major point is for us as a green community, we deserve to be recognizing these changes. We deserve to be seeing how we can become part of it, because at times maybe we are thinking that these things are very far from us and we cannot do it, when maybe we have the skills, and if there's someone among us like Dr. Shian, he can be a motivation and inspiration. And talking about motivation and inspiration, when I started my own cloud journey, it is through him that he inspired me, and today I have at least 5 cloud certified certificates. And definitely I'm not stopping there. I'm really looking forward to get more into this direction. So even if this is not interesting to you as an adult, what about the kids growing up? If you have a child in high school, you have a child in the university doing sciences, this is a place that you should look into. So not to say much, I just wanted to give that brief rundown of why we should look into this. And I'll just allow Dr. Shian to go ahead and take this away and tell us more of what he has in mind, especially for Wirfon. Yeah, Shian, the floor is
Okay,
yours.
thanks. Okay, hopefully I can share my screen. Do I still have 30 minutes?
Yes, you do. You still have. It's
Okay,
yeah, sure. Like let me give you. I think it's sharing rights.
I think I'm sharing already. I can see my slides. Oh, at least I can see
Okay,
my screen.
okay, that's good.
Okay, good. So thanks, by the way, everyone, for inviting me to this session. It's an interesting one and also a challenging one because most of the people that Banjika said I trained are professionals, right? And they're usually quite senior as well. So it's a lot easier to give a conversation on cloud. I think there's somebody who isn't on mute. Can you mute them? I can hear a lot of noise coming back to me. Uh, Okay. Okay, well, I'll carry on anyway and see if I can ignore that. So what I thought I'll do today is tell you a little bit about how I got to where I am, because I think that a lot on career mentoring and coaching, but I think sometimes maybe all it takes is being aware of someone who has been through that journey before. And that's sometimes all the inspiration that one needs to begin going on their own journey as well. So I came to the UK back in 1989. I mean, back then we all had, the government had scholarship schemes, right? That's how we all got here. And the degree I studied wasn't really in IT. I did engineering, which I always think is an excellent foundation for doing anything. I did civil engineering. I actually wanted to be an architect. That was my goal. And my dad was a civil engineer, so I thought combining architecture with engineering was something he was going to sign up to. So that's what I studied, first degree. But before long, I realized that it was going to be tough, right? Because back then, we talk about Brexit and all these things, and we're worried about jobs and, are we going to have the ability to move around and stay? Back then, it was even worse because as someone from the continent of Africa, you really didn't have any place. And so we had to look for where the future opportunity was. So even at that very early age of about 18, coming to the UK, I already had to begin thinking about how I was going to make a path for myself, right? So it wasn't just about studying what I liked, it was about studying what I thought was going to be in demand, right? So I always used to think. And so when I finished my first degree, it was very clear to me that technology was going to be big. right? Back then we didn't have emails, right? So we basically, email did not exist when I was doing my first degree until 92. The first email I actually got was when I moved to Swansea, where I was doing my master's, in let's say 92, 93. And but it was very clear that technology was going to be big. So I did a master's and PhD in something called numerical modeling, which is developing software for engineering analysis. And I did that. After doing that, I actually had a job in London. It was a lot easier, right? When you have a PhD and it's in an area like that, companies could apply for work permits. And so that's how I got to stay here. And something happened, right? In my first job, I used to have a lot of time because I found myself in a company where most people had PhDs. And the first thing that dawned on me was career progression in this place was going to be tough because people had to die, right, before you could move up because everybody appeared to have a lot more than you did. So I had a lot of time because my job back then was essentially compiling code, and that takes, back then it used to take maybe 2 hours. And a lot of the times you do it and realize there was a problem and you have to go do it again. So I began reading a lot in my spare time. And interestingly, I stumbled across the technology section of the Financial Times, which is a paper in the UK. And that was an interesting coincidence because as somebody who is technical, I just kind of found my way reading business articles on where technology was going. And I don't know how many of you do that, but if you don't, I strongly encourage you to do that because if you're trying to make a decision about what career to pursue, what better way of doing it but to actually think about what the business people think, right? And where they're willing to invest. So back then there was something about Java everywhere, right? Which was the whole idea of writing code and running it anywhere on very small systems as well as very, very big systems. So I began the journey that Banjika told you about. I began learning on my own and getting certified. So I took some IBM certifications. Cut a long story short, at some point I got a call, went to one of IBM's research centers in the Midlands. And I had one of the most easy interviews I ever had. It was like a conversation, and they gave me an amazing job, right? And I think part of why that was easy was because they assumed that I knew a lot already because I was certified. So for a lot of young people, what I always say is that having a degree is great, but how do you differentiate yourself, right, in the marketplace? Because every year there are many people who graduate from different universities with similar degrees. And so having something which is industry based helps tremendously. And I've seen it in my case as well, right? And the reality is it's not so much more difficult, right? So if there's anything that anyone would take away, I think is, first of all, you have to go the extra mile because the competition is steep. And it's not so easy to do that if you focus on the right area. So what I'm going to do today is talk about cloud technology, but maybe not from a very technical perspective, because I understand that many of us here may not be technical. But I want to try and share with you why I think it's important, some of the things that are changing the way the world works today, and the opportunities that this is creating. And I'll also talk about how you can begin that journey. Now, there's something Banjinka and I have discussed, which is the possibility of actually taking this further in terms of mentoring, coaching, training people. We'll see if we can offer something in addition, right? But I believe there are some little things that one could do that could make a major impact on people's careers and well-being, and we're willing to help where we can. So I'm not going to talk a lot about myself because this is my LinkedIn profile. You can go have a look and see exactly what I've done. Now, just to give you an idea of the opportunities this has created for me personally, last year, in the last 9 months of the year, I visited something like 13 countries. And out of those 13 countries, there were about 17 unique cities that I visited. From Tokyo in Japan, I went to Kyoto, went to Sydney, right? I went many times to the US, and all of this was basically training. And I got to meet so many people and learn a lot of stuff, right? So there's a lot of opportunity, I guess. So let's get right in. Now, what I decided to do is I decided I wasn't going to create any slides, right? But of course, I needed to leave you with something that is impactful, something that you can remember, and hopefully go into a little bit further. So I have on my screen here a number of tabs that I'm going to go through. And what I also decided to do was to see if the theory, the journey that I went through is still relevant today. So I just picked one article, sorry, let's just say one magazine, which is Forbes. Now, none of you would associate Forbes with technology. Forbes is usually a business magazine, and Forbes usually talks about billionaires and people making a lot of money, right? So I thought, wouldn't it be nice to take a look at Forbes and to kind of assess what Forbes is actually saying about technology in general and where technology is heading, especially for the young people, right? And the reason I wanted to do this was also to give them an idea of how they can kind of forge a path, by themselves, because the journey for all of us could be very different, right? But we could all be in the same area, the same industry. So I'm going to start off by just talking a little bit about the evolution of cloud computing. Now, we can talk about what cloud computing is. What I'm actually doing now will not be possible without cloud, right? So cloud essentially is the ability for you to access IT systems, right, without you needing to actually install it locally. So I'm presenting to you now using Zoom, right? This Zoom service isn't owned by me, right? I don't even know where it is running from. All I need is an internet. All I need is my computer, and I can communicate with you wherever you are. So cloud is what makes that possible. But the beauty of cloud from a technical point of view is that as an engineer, you can actually do a lot more with less, because you don't have to do a lot of the things that we all used to do in the past, like buying machines, setting it up, and all of that stuff. The other benefit is that it gives you a lot more opportunity to reach out to a lot of people. So it creates a tremendous set of business opportunities. But you know what? This is actually the old way of thinking about cloud computing. And if you look at this, by the way, I'm going to share these links, right? But if you look at this, now we're talking about, what this article talks about, and by the way, I chose this randomly, but it talks about the fact that it starts off with something interesting. What are the Flintstones and Obama? What do they have in common? Okay, talks about when they were born in the 60s. And then the point it's trying to make is that cloud computing is not new. It's been around for a very, very long time. In fact, it was around the 60s that IBM essentially came up with the idea of being able to access computers remotely over a network, right? So this stuff has been around for a while. The difference, though, is that some companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Google made it, accessible to all of us, right? And then companies like Facebook took it to another level. I was listening to the kids talking about social media, and then many of them were talking about how they're using social media in order to create opportunities for themselves. That's enabled by cloud computing, right? All these companies like Zuckerberg, the guys who created Twitter, all of these guys are billionaires because of cloud, right? So ultimately, this is a massive, massive industry. And in terms of numbers, right, you may not be aware of the scale of this industry. You're talking $3.7 trillion in terms of how much money people are spending on cloud-related services. It's massive, right? I would really challenge, when I think of our continent, Africa, and I think about the fact that we have a lot of young people and people who dwell on natural resources and things like that, I always look at that as a pretty naive point of view, because the billions of dollars that are being made today are not in those industries anymore. They are in the information industry. And the great thing about the information industry, right, is that all it requires is a computer and a connection, right? And the ability and knowledge, or the ability to learn, the ability to be curious, right? Now, the other thing which is very interesting, I know there's been a lot of debate about 5G, and people are coming up with ridiculous theories in terms of COVID, 19 and 5G and whatever. Anyway, bottom line is 5G takes this to the next level. I have a phone here, right? This is my mobile phone. It's one of these Samsung phones. I used to be an iPhone guy, but I'm very much a Samsung person now. And it's got 5G. And so sometimes what I do is I check the speed. I have fiber at home, and it's actually a physical fiber. It's virgin. So it's not like through, third parties and stuff. It's a wire level connection. My 5G connection on my phone is at least 1.5 times faster than the fiber that comes to my home, right? And this is creating massive, massive opportunities, because it's not going to be long where a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of computers and stuff, you'll be doing it on your phone. And we all know how phones are extremely powerful. So if you push that to how you can use that in other industries, it's amazing. Now, think about cars, right? There's a lot of talk about driverless automobiles, right? The ability to control a car remotely, or the ability to embed intelligence in that car so the car can figure out where to go, that requires computing. That requires a network. And so if you have 5G and all these things, again, that's where the opportunity is coming from. Many of you, I'm sure, are in the healthcare industry, right? In the healthcare industry, we talk about, remote health, having doctors accessing patient information from different places as well. Now, combine that with the ability to analyze data and be able to predict illnesses, what that people may encounter because of what you know about them, that also creates a massive, massive opportunity, right? Now, you may not know this, because of COVID-19, a lot of people have been at home, especially teenagers. And so the gaming industry has grown tremendously. Someone told me that you're talking maybe like 400% growth, right? Just over the last few months, because all these people at home spend a lot of time, right, playing games. And what about our homes? I have a speaker system at home called Sonos, right, which is wireless. And what that means is that in every room in the house where there is that speaker, I can have music playing at the same time. I deliberately decided to deactivate all the voice activation stuff because basically it's listening all the time and you never really know what's happening. But the ability for us to have these technologies in our homes moving forward will just be, that will be standard. And a lot of this is because of 5G, right? Not necessarily because 5G makes these services accessible even when there's no wired connection, right? And you can do this at a scale that was previously not possible. So the reason I'm actually dwelling on this so much is because I'm trying to get across the idea that you can get into this industry without necessarily being technical, right? Because there's an angle which is around understanding the industry problems, understanding the industry opportunities, and being able to translate some of those into a technical solution that may actually be implemented by a third party, right? So a lot of the times people think they cannot participate because they need to be technical, and that's just not true, right? Now, we're using Zoom. This is another interesting one, right? Many of you may not know this, but look at this. Zoom basically grew by around 300%, right, from before the pandemic. Now, that number may actually be bigger now because obviously this article was written a while back, okay? And you can see how many million users Microsoft is adding daily, I think, 12 million. Google is the same story. All of these companies have been making a lot of money because of the fact that we all now have to work remotely. And this remote working thing will not go away. It will carry on. So for a lot of young people, what this means is that there is a major opportunity that is here to stay, right? And this is, again, evidence is there from what these guys are saying. Now, so why are we talking about this? Now, we're talking about this is because this actually creates a real opportunity. The bottom line is that the level of skill that many of these companies require have always been, well in excess of the available skills, right? So the demand has always been greater than the availability of skilled resource. And with COVID, right, it's made things even worse, right? So the difference is now even more amplified. And the growth in terms of the amount of money companies are spending in this area, right, is exactly the same. Now, one of the other interesting thing here is that in non-technical related industries, so sometimes when people think about cloud, they think only about Microsoft, IBM, companies like that, Google. But there are other companies that are using these technologies, and these guys need skills as well. So even if you're not very comfortable moving all the way, right, into a tech industry, you can always look at opportunities that exist in your own industry, and that could be manufacturing, transportation, travel, education, right? It was very interesting with the kids, right? We're talking earlier about education. One of them was talking about e-learning, the fact that they're learning a lot, and there was a lot of conversation about creating content. That in itself is a business opportunity, right? That's available, something that you can capture on your own, or you could actually do this by virtue of working through a third party. But the bottom line is that this is not just theory, this is reality. There are a lot of skills, right? Now, many of you like to know about salaries, right? Because talking about this conceptually may be like, okay, fair enough, but why should I spend sleepless nights actually learning this stuff? Banjika talked about the fact that he has 5 certifications, and I asked him a question the other day. I asked him if his bank manager has called him, asking if he's been stealing money from somewhere. Because my point was that when you start getting certified, it needs to count financially. Because if you don't make that deliberate decision to which takes effort, right? And everything is a risk. Generally speaking, when we're in an industry, we're very comfortable, we know our colleagues and everything, but you need to develop a culture of actually trying new things, right? And I've never made a career decision which I've regretted, right? Throughout my career, I've moved from technical to marketing to sales to I've even run my own business. Didn't work out as expected, but I learned a lot. So and I've always learned something new, right? And through that journey, I've been able to be very, very clear on what I enjoy. There are a lot of things that I could do which could pay me a lot of money, but these are things that I would never even think about doing because I'm not prepared to sacrifice personal comfort for financial gain, right? But if you look at this, it gives you an idea. So the highest paying cloud certification is what Banjika says he has, which is Google Cloud Professional Architect. Look at the average. We're talking about average salaries here. We're not talking about the low end, right? We're talking about average, which means that if you're pretty good, you could earn a lot more than that, 175, right? $1,000. And there are not many people that actually have these certifications. On average, if you look at the top 15, right, certifications, that's the average salary, 145, which means that's roughly, I don't know, maybe in today's money, maybe 120,000 pounds or something like that in euros. I don't know what it is, maybe close to 145,000 euros. Look at the jump, right? 25% growth. I know we have many nurses here who keep complaining. I mean, I think the most the government offers in the UK is like 3%. If they're lucky, maybe 2% or 1%, right? But that's not going to change because it's public sector. If you want to participate in something like that, you've got to think about, potentially moving on to areas which are rewarded, right? Okay, so a lot about this talk. Now, the question is, how do you transition into an area like this without any experience, right? That's always the big thing. And, I want to end with this because, like I said before, we're going to look at ways in which we can carry on the conversation. This is just like getting you exposed to the opportunity and getting you reflecting on what it might mean. But look at this. Now, these are some ideas on how you can actually get started. And I think this is very important for young people on the call. There are many communities out there who are developing, things that are of interest to them. Now, one of the things that I have, I don't know if you guys can see this. Can you see it? So this here, right, is what you call a Raspberry Pi. Each of these things cost about $30, right? These things but each of them is like a full computer, right? And I have 4 of them, which means that I have basically a cluster, a group of computers acting as a single computer. Now, what I have here is a device that allows me to connect to the network. It's like a wireless hub, right? And then I have a battery pack. So I plug my power in there, and I have a USB thing that powers all of these computers here, right? And this is my network. So with something like this, you can basically learn everything there is about cloud, right? From a hardware point of view, if you're interested, because remember, you don't even need to know about this. All you need to know is how to use a browser, right? But as a child, I would have been fascinated to have something like this to play with. In fact, back then, our toys used to be, we were given something, it got broken, and then we tried to fix it, right? That's how we learned. And, these days, kids can have access to these things and play with it. But there's no better way than actually joining communities, and there are many of them out there, and just learning, right, as you go. The other thing, which I would subscribe to 1,000,000%, and I'm so happy that you got kids presenting here, is that when you teach other people, you learn the most, right? So one of the things I kept telling Banjika is that we need to create a platform where people can share knowledge and learn from each other, because you may think that you're giving people other people are benefiting from you. The reality, though, is that you're benefiting the most, right? So teaching other people what you're learning is one of the biggest ways to become an expert. The other thing, right, find work. I mean, there are websites online, many of them, that allow you to actually do little projects, like build a website for someone, if you're younger, right? Or even volunteer, right? We have, in Banning, for example, we have a grant from Microsoft that gives us access to their platform. So we don't have to pay for it. Now, if you're a young person on this call and you really want to learn about cloud computing, all you need to do is reach out to Banjika and I, right? And we can give you access to that platform and you can begin to learn. You can maybe put your hand up and say, I want to help build, manage the website from full, or I want to help build a website that enables us to engage more with the younger members. Whatever that is, we've got the resources. And by doing that, you actually get a lot of experience, right? Start a business, right? I'm happy that when we were talking about e-learning, there was a question about, have you thought about creating content for yourself? You mentioned that you can watch footballing skills and things and learn from that. What about making this a business, right? And that's also an opportunity for some of the young kids. And then this is a big one, right? Even if you're studying or whatever, or you're getting university degrees, getting certified actually helps a lot. In fact, there was an article I shared on the full forum, which was about someone's perspective that certifications are becoming even more important than university degrees. I wouldn't necessarily say they are becoming more important. What I can say, though, is that certifications allow you to differentiate yourself even more, right? Now, certifications by themselves, that's just a piece of paper. There are others on the call like Kenneth Maimo, I know he joined earlier. And we've been talking about the fact that even with certifications, sometimes what you actually need is a real world experience. So you need to be comfortable, you need to be able to tell a story. And that story could be a banking system you implemented. It could be something like this, right? So this is a website that I basically developed as part of me doing training. Now, why did I do it? I didn't have to. I could just go do my training and stuff. But I did it because I wanted to learn, right? So if you go to artificial intelligence, that's not my area, right? But I have some stuff here on artificial intelligence. I have this is what I actually do most of my training on. And I've published a lot of stuff, right? On, these are basically books. These are my notes. So when I teach, I make notes and I use this platform to share those notes with students. And this is part of me obviously learning. I'm trying to give myself a reason for spending time learning new things, right? So, so with that said, I would like to leave, in fact, my phone is actually vibrating. I guess it's a cue that I should stop, right? So, so I'm going to actually leave it here and see if there are any questions, because I think I've got roughly 5 minutes more. So Banchika, back to you guys.
Thank you very much for that first presentation. I think, yeah, let's just hear. Is there anyone who has a comment to make? Anyone who wants to say something or ask a question to Shiyghan? We can have an extra maybe 5 minutes, Shiyghan, and then maybe we'll also drop uh, what we will do after this. So please feel very comfortable, and if you have a question to ask, especially the young ones, don't be thinking that you are too young. If you are excited or if you want to know more, please speak up. Don't be ashamed.
I think we have two hands up.
Right.
First, let's start with Dr. Lawal.
Great.
So,
Dr. Lawang, the first, yours.
are
After
you
that,
getting
Ray,
me?
and then Vero.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So that's a great presentation, Mr. Shiyghan Navti. We have not met ever, and I've followed your presentation very, very well. And my question and my challenge is, we are sitting in Europe. How possible, how feasible is it to make these things also a reality back home in Sir or in Kar or in Kuvlu?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? So this is my perspective on what I've learned over time as a result of, I guess, trying things. I always believe that there is a time and a place. A lot of the times, through our enthusiasm, we try to take ideas to communities and environments, and we package those ideas in a way that doesn't resonate with their needs. So in my old age and my wisdom, I've now started taking a step back and saying, unless I understand what their needs are, and unless I understand how this can actually solve those specific needs, you need to you need to be cautious, right? So my take on that is, I believe something like this could be extremely helpful, right? Especially with some of the new things like 5G and stuff like that, because we know we have infrastructure problems in many of these places that you're talking about. And even in the UK, there are issues with mobile connectivity in rural areas. So what more of Cameroon, right? In terms of connectivity, in rural areas. Having said that, you don't actually need to connect everybody. You could connect key workers, right? And then have those key workers serve the community. I was watching a video on Rwanda and how they were able to use technology to essentially make information available to remote health centers, and then have people in those health centers who essentially acted as the Google for those communities. So if you have a problem, you go to those people. Those people will provide you with advice and guidance. But then if you needed a procedure done, like you needed medical help, there was a health center locally that could actually serve you, right? Maybe if it was childbirth or whatever. So I would say that use cases like that, I believe, is where we need to start. And the other thing I would also say is, I would personally look at other countries which maybe have begun that journey, right? Like I just gave you a case about Rwanda, to say, is there an African country that is using technology in a way that's really benefiting the community? And can we learn from them and then apply this to their needs, right? So that's my take on it, that I am a technical guy. I would always look to those who really understand the needs locally, and then I can apply what I know in a way that maybe helps to move the conversation forward. Yeah, but it's a tricky one, Gilbert, because I've tried before to come up with ideas and it's always tough because there's always been a misalignment between what I'm trying to do and what people are really interested in addressing right now. So that's another maybe important lesson for the young people, that as you start thinking about your own business and doing things, always reflect on whether that's something that your customers need, because you may be passionate about it, but nobody may be interested in it, right? So always try and do that.
Okay. Dr. Vero?
Yes, Lady Tib. Thank you, Dr. Shiyghan. First of all, are you going to share your slides?
I'm going to share the links. You remember I said I didn't have any slides, right? But okay. I'm going to share the links, yes.
Okay. Secondly, it's always, I'm kind of also interested in exploring and doing something else. But I always, I'm blocked in a way that I don't, someone like me, I would like to have like a step-by-step, on how to go from this point to the other point, like really having a schedule of what it needs to get to whatever in cloud computing. So what my question is it possible, I know you mentioned that you and Ban were thinking about something like to have like material that one can use to say, if you want to go this route, you can start from this point, someone who is not even who is not good in mathematics, but who can, try to explore and know for themselves.
Yeah, so what I would suggest, right, is that, Banjika, and maybe this is an action we should take from this, right, that what I would suggest is that we identify, if you're interested in having a look at this, right, if this is something that triggers your interest, reach out to Banjika, and then what we'll do is we'll then figure out how best to have another conversation with you, right, and then see how we could maybe support you in what you're trying to do, right? So this is obviously just a sharing of ideas, but if it triggers an interest, let us know, and we'll absolutely look at how we can help you with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Great.
The next hand up is Ray B. And after Ray, Eric in July.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President, and Dr. Shiyghan. In short, we like to distinguish respectable people like you by saying Shiyghan. So um, I am Ray Benafti. I'm here from the US. I was kind of like curious, to listen to you. Folks like you, you're a rare germ that comes up in the community once in a while. And people like you are the guys that saw the future. Because if the mind was not that curious as yours, it's not everybody that figures out things that early. So it's an immense privilege for me to see you present. I've read about you. I know a little bit about you, and I just want to, thank you on that front and praise you for trying to bring this into our knowledge. I have two questions or comments here to make. The first one is, yes, cloud computing, that is what is ringing now. And we all know if history is anything to go by. We've been having we had a big dot-com bubble sometime. And with everything going to the cloud and with history having told us, stuff happens once in a while. Where do you see this cloud business, in a hitch? Do you see any potential area or opportunity where someone malicious somewhere may just kind of bring down the cloud on quotes? And what opportunities do you see in that light for those people who may not just be interested in doing cloud now, but kind of betting on what may happen to the cloud so that they can take the future forward? And that is my first comment or question. The second one is, I know this may be very personal, but I think it's still kind of general. If you're looking for young kids, some of us are kind of on the other side of the age group, so
Career change.
Yes. So in terms of career change, of trying to bring this opportunity to kids, what are the sort of things that you would advise parents to be tilting kids towards in terms of shows or games or things like that at home to ignite, the interest in this cloud computing? Sorry, my kid is here.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
So,
okay.
I'll take off my comments.
Okay.
And thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. So two things. I'm going to start with the second one, right? Now, this is what I think. I think that generally speaking, when you're talking about things like cloud computing, a lot of the times kids see that as studies. But personally, I think if you get into this, it's like playing a game. It's like playing a video game. And same thing with my kids at home, right? So my son will spend a lot of time playing games. And I always tell him that, and by the way, he's not into any of these, right, which is kind of strange yet. But I always say that this is kind of like a game because it's problem solving, right? Now, I decided to put this on the screen just to show you, because sometimes we talk about these things and in very abstract terms, but the way you work with cloud is just by working on a website. So what you see here is the Google Cloud Platform. It's literally just building things on a website, okay, and creating things on the website. Everything you see here is what's actually running this website here, right? And I'm not going to go into the details of how it works. So the first thing I would say with you young kids is that it is fun, right? And we need to find a way to enable them to experience how exciting and how fun it can be developing software and trying to solve problems using essentially instructions, because all you're doing is you're providing a system like this, which is like a computer. You're providing it with instructions and saying, do this first, do this later. If this happens, do this. And that's all it is. That's what programming is, right? So my view is that we need to encourage them to actually be curious. We need to provide an opportunity for them to play with some of these things. And we need to obviously help them connect with other learners, because remember what we said, the more you teach, the more you learn, right? So we need to create a platform where they could learn from each other. So maybe that's another thing, Ban, that we could look at. Can we identify some kids here who are interested in technology and maybe create a little group where they could be doing some interesting exercises. There's nothing that beats playing with things, right? So that's the first thing. Then the second question you said about the bubble and all of those. So in my view, and that's still, you might say we're still in that point now. Initially, we talked a lot about cloud computing from the point of view of the companies, right? Facebook, Apple, Amazon, companies like that. But if you really think about it, we've now gone past that stage. We're now at a stage where technology is just part and parcel of every business. How many businesses exist today who are not using Zoom, or they're not using some sort of web conferencing tool? How many businesses exist today who don't have like a content management system, a system for managing information and for sharing information? So what you're going to find increasingly is that technology is just going to be around us, right? I mean, I have a watch here, which is a smart whatever, it's connected to my phone. I can check my emails and everything from my watch, right? It's a wearable device. So I think in future, this is just going to be part and parcel of everyday life. And of course, that comes with risks, right? In the sense that if anyone breaks into any of these things, potentially they can get access to information, which, having said that, we obviously have a vested interest. There are so many communities who are out there to make sure that information is protected, either using technology or using regulation, right? So I think those risks will never go away. And we'll always have bubbles because that's just the nature of the way, the industry works. However, there are certain industries which are more resilient than others. And I think technology is more resilient than many other industries because it basically powers everything. When we had the dot-com bubble, a lot of companies disappeared, but those companies that were able to survive the bubble are probably the billion-dollar companies today, right? They were able to grow to amazing, because of the need, right? We have a need to do things better, and automation is a key part of that. So I'll leave it at that, yeah? I think there was one or two more, right?
Yeah, sorry?
Yes, I think it's Eric that had something to say. And,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
yes,
after
but,
Eric, we'll just move on to the next very soon. So Eric, go ahead, please.
Oh, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Dr. Shiyghan, and say it's a pleasure really following through with your brilliant presentation. I would also want to use this opportunity to congratulate the kids who were on the panel also as regards the use of social media and all that. Dr. Shiyghan, if I may ask, you said you visited about 13 countries within the past 9 months, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. How many of those countries were in Africa? That's the first one. Then secondly, as you know, we are, sorry, I'm in a car. So if there is some sort of audio issues, I'll just have to repeat. Then secondly, we are, as you know, we are in the 4th industrial revolution, which is pretty much what they call man and machine, say machine and man, which is artificial intelligence. What are the prospects of African countries? How do you think we can leapfrog that sort of technological gap that exists between, say, the developing countries and developed countries? Yeah. Then the third question comes down to, I will just follow up on what Gilbert earlier asked, which is like, say, from a practical perspective, how you think somebody, say a kid like in Banten, where I come from, can benefit from such, say, from the advances of technology. I'll relate this to a certain project which we started working on sometime in 2015 and 2016 before say the war started. What we wanted to do was some sort of, use, the advances in technology and also cloud technology in order to try and, link up schools back home so that kids, like for instance, kids like in Banten, because what I realized is that I was with my daughter, say at home here, and she had issues on probability. So she had homework on probability. But probability is something that I last sat on the class and did that maybe 20 years ago. So I was just scared about, say, the daddy there be showing his ignorance in addressing such of, say, probability, say, like questions for a secondary school kid. But then I told her to try and check out YouTube. And I was amazed by the results, because even when they did said year test, she performed extremely well, and she made me understand that she used only Google YouTube material in order to prepare for the test, which gave me now that understanding that if we do set up, say, like give access to YouTube sessions to kids back home, because there is so much material online that kids back home, even in their localities, in their villages, they can study. They can study and even write like those, like the certification exams, and perform brilliantly.
Absolutely.
Because I realized back home that some of the issues that we face, especially the kids face, is that the instructors are not even, passing on the right information. You see, because most of the teachers that said that are in, for instance, Banten, and which is, I believe it's the similar case with some villages, is that they are at times school dropouts. So can you imagine a school dropout teaching another person, another kid in the village?
Yes.
You see brilliant children in the villages, but just because they are poorly mentored, they have difficulties in progressing. So we were trying to see if we can set up such a system that can permit kids in Banten to have like projected video sessions of say like mathematics, English, all the courses that are relevant, so that they can learn and even write their examinations. So what do you think about that? Thank you very much.
So yeah, first question, I went to no African country, right? So let me even think, did I even go to the Middle East? No, Middle East as well, right? So I didn't go. Having said that, I've had requests to go do, and I've been to the Middle East earlier, but not as part of the Google training, not within the last 9 months, right? Now, there's something else that I would like to say, though, is that I went to Japan, and that was the first time I went there. And I was very interested in the country and very interested in the culture. And one of the things I noticed just traveling around the world and going to all of these countries is that, you know what? They're not really that far ahead in terms of my assessment of their use of a lot of these technologies, right? Because I sit and I talk to people and I'm training them, and I realize that a lot of this stuff is new to them. And many of them haven't really been using it in real projects. So the bottom line is that Africa is nowhere to be found, in the sense that I haven't actually been there training, but the gap is not that big, right? Now, on the positive side, the last course I did, which was, again, a Google course I did remotely in the European region, I actually had roughly 4 people join from Africa. I think 3 of them were from South Africa. One, I believe, or 1 or 2 were from Morocco, right? And I spent a lot of time on the course talking about that, right? Which I don't know if the other European people, were happy with, but I did spend a lot of time discussing Africa and stuff like that. So my personal view is that we're not too far behind, right? But we lack that level of awareness and understanding. I think there are very few people on the continent that really understand the opportunity. And the reason I say it's big is because we have a young population. So going back to your next question about how do we really make this relevant, right? Now, personally, this is what I think. I think we need to look beyond just providing knowledge for the sake of it, because people always like to think of the return on investment. Why am I doing this? Now, technology creates, or cloud in general, creates a huge opportunity from the point of view of enabling you to be able to set up your own business, maybe doing something better than you would have otherwise if you were doing it all manually, right? It enables you also to be able to reach out to potentially new customers or new users. So think of Cameroon, bilingual country, in quotes. There are many organizations that need translation services. So providing a service which is all about being able to identify people who can speak or maybe write English and French, so they can offer translation services at a very cost-effective price to organizations or individuals who are outside of maybe even Africa. That's already something that we can provide, right? In terms of learning, going back to the example you gave, I would say that rather than us just looking at maybe the students learning, I would say, how can we create communities so they can learn together? Because when you learn together, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more interesting. And with COVID, which has forced many of us to be using Zoom and things like that, because if COVID did not exist, I can assure you that for the next 3 years, FU would never have considered doing a Zoom conference, right? Now, because of COVID, we were forced to do it. A lot of these COVID and this Zoom and e-learning and stuff, I was trying to get our community to look at these things like 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, and nobody was interested. But all of a sudden, overnight, we now realize just how powerful it is. So I would say that maybe what we could look at doing is, how do we create a network? I would say, how do we create a community of learners, as opposed to us just focusing on how do we tell people where the websites are, right? Because if you create a community of learners, it's much more fun. They are forging relationships with each other, and they're likely to learn from each other. Because remember, one of the best ways of learning is by teaching others. So they're teaching them each other. Very powerful, right? And I think so. Basically, did I miss was there a third question you asked, which I forgot?
No, I think you've addressed most of the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of the time, obviously, because I've
yes. Thank you for that, Shiyghan.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shiyghan.
Yeah.
I'm interested in cloud studies, but cloud computing, but I'm not very good. I think I've done big data. That's the only thing I've done. But I know from there I'm gonna pick up.
Okay. If you need help, you know where to go, right?
Yeah.
So just a quick, as we say, this is for Wirfon by Wirfon, and we are just saying that we are available. Okay, I see that. Let me just, I think Chile is already.
Yeah, Chile is in the house.
Right, but let's finish. It's important. Let's just have this round up. Yeah. The point here is for Wirfon by Wirfon, and we are saying that we are available, and we can only build a community when more people indicate that interest. And when if there are people here who really see that this is something they want to do, and again, even if you are not doing it, you may have a relative who is in high school, you may have someone who is in the university, and the point is for us to grow as a community with the changing time, we have to orientate the young one to fall in the right path. And just like Dr. Shiyghan said, it doesn't have to be just full IT. If you are doing medicine today, tomorrow medicine requires IT. If you are doing manufacturing and whatever, Lidl here uses a lot of IT. Most of their things run on Google Cloud. So I just want to appeal here that we are ready and we want to build this community, not just here in Europe. We are glad to have you here. Be that representative for us and share that knowledge back to BFU and say that we are looking forward to build this community from SOR by SOR and try to ensure that SOR is not left up behind in this changing landscape. So due to the time that we have, we are supposed to be at 4:30 p.m. Ready to have Chile. We've already stretched almost 20 minutes, and we just want to have Chile for a short time, say 15 minutes, then we have to move to the next presentation. So I don't know if Dr. Shiyghan, you have a last word just to say so that we transit to the next step immediately. And then if you have questions, there will be a virtual party. We can talk more on this after the full end of the program. And then again, as we say, the conversation is not ending now. It will carry from after today. So Dr. Shiyghan, please go ahead.
No, that's it. I don't want to keep Chile waiting too long. So thanks everyone. Like you said, Banjika, we're here to help. This is something we've been talking about a lot, right? Yeah. But we can't help if you don't, if nobody's, requires help, right? So, and the other point I would also say is that don't feel that you don't know or you don't have what it takes. I think everybody, including those who don't know anything about IT, you'll be amazed at how easy it is to transition into some of these areas, right? So don't worry about the level you're at. If you have an interest, reach out, and then we'll have the conversation and figure out how best, to help you.
Great.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing now.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we hope everyone enjoyed this. The conversation will continue. We are having, I think,
Kikum kitala, tamashin reisi tarla, tamashin buba tarla, tamashin kaba tarla, tamashin sala tarla, tamashin shimi tarla,